second law of thermodynamics. Okay, so these are the things you should remember. So first law of thermodynamics is quantitative statement. As I said, it deals only with energy interaction. It does not tell the direction of the flow of energy. So on the other hand, second law of thermodynamics is a qualitative statement. Okay, one is quantitative and another one is qualitative statement. Okay. So all the things we discussed in the previous class, cyclic heat pump, okay, cyclic heat engine we studied. So then we studied thermal reservoir, cyclic heat engine, cyclic heat pump, okay. Next refrigerator we studied, difference between heat pump and refrigerator, okay. Next relationship between coefficient of performance in case of a refrigerator and heat pump. It is given by COP of HP equals to 1 plus COP of R. So next, second law of thermodynamics we studied Clausius statement and Kelvin Planck statement. Okay, so I'll repeat once again. Kelvin Planck statement: it is impossible for any device as the heat engine that operates on a cycle to receive the heat from a single reservoir and produce a net amount of work. Okay, means that so in order to work any heat engine, we should have the minimum two temperature sources. One is the source at higher temperature and another one is sink at lower temperature. Suppose if you are not having any one thermal reservoir, it is not possible to work for the heat engine. So we should have a minimum two thermal reservoir. One is sink and another one is a source. Okay. Suppose if you are having two things, then only the heat engine will work. That is the concept of Kelvin Planck statement. Okay, Kelvin Planck statement mainly related to the heat engine. Okay. Clausius statement related to a heat pump and refrigeration. Okay, heat never flows from lower temperature to higher temperature. It always flows from the higher temperature gradient to lower temperature gradient. Okay, so that is, and then how we are going to put it in the statement is that it is impossible to construct a device as the heat pump that operates in a cycle produces no effect other than the transfer of heat from lower temperature to higher temperature body. The meaning is that heat cannot flow from cold body to hot body without any work input. Suppose you supply the work to the heat pump or refrigeration, then the pump and refrigeration will work. So with the aid of uh, work done, so heat pump and refrigeration system will work. That is the meaning of Clausius statement. Okay. Next, we discussed PMM2. PMM2 means we learned the PMM1 in case of first law of thermodynamics, and here in this chapter we are going to study PMM2. That is, PMM2 means, so here you see the diagram. PMM1 means it is accepting the heat Q1 from the thermal reservoir at temperature T1 and produces net amount of the work done, and it is exactly equals to Q1. No heat rejected to the sink. You see, we are not finding out any sink in this diagram, means the net work done is exactly equals to the amount of the heat transferred. And you remember the efficiency of any heat engine is given by net work done divided by heat supplied. That is the standard formula. You remember, net work done divided by heat supplied. Net work done is Q1 divided by heat supplied is Q1. You'll get the efficiency as 1. Okay. So no heat engine will have 100% efficiency. It is always less than 100% due to the losses takes place. Hence, it violates the Kelvin Planck statement. So such a machine is imaginary, and this kind of machine is not possible. It violates second law of thermodynamics, particularly the Kelvin Planck statement. Hence, it is impossible to construct. The efficiency of PMM2 is always 100%, and net amount of the work done equals to the heat transferred. Okay, this is the concept of PMM2, perpetual motion machine of secondary. It is impossible to construct PMM2. Okay. Next, Kelvin Planck statement. Okay. So these what diagrams we are seeing. So once again, I'll explain the equivalence of Kelvin Planck statement and Clausius statement. So that is, the violation of Clausius statement violates the Kelvin-Planck statement, and the violation of Kelvin-Planck statement violates Clausius statement. Okay, so I'll explain once again. There are two things: equivalence of Clausius statement to Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay, you see the first diagram. So this is the a violation of Clausius statement. Okay, heading is the Clausius statement violates Kelvin-Planck statement. There are two things. First case is the violation of Clausius statement violates Kelvin-Planck statement, and second case is violation of Kelvin-Planck statement violates the Clausius statement. Now I am explaining the case one. Case 1 is violation of Clausius statement violates Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay, you observe the diagram. So you have to explain. It's the most important concept. Every time they used to ask in the exam how the Clausius statement violates the Kelvin-Planck statement and how the Kelvin-Planck statement violates Clausius statement. The diagrams are most important. Okay, so first you have to draw the diagram correctly, showing all the details. Okay, you first analyze the diagram. Okay, you see we are having the two reservoir. One is the high temperature reservoir at temperature T1 and low temperature reservoir at T2. Okay, and the heat pump is there working in between reservoir T1 and reservoir T2. Okay, and Q2 is the heat taken from the sink and supplied to the source in case of heat pump. Okay, and here you observe the heat engine. Engine, it takes the Q1, the heat from the temperature reservoir T1, and rejects the heat to the sink, which is at temperature T2, and net amount of the work done W equals to Q1 minus Q2. You see how it violates the Kelvin Clausius statement. There is no work done at all. As I said, without work done, the heat pump will not work. Okay, so only here the heat transfer takes place between temperature source and sink at T1 and T2. There is no work done at all. If there is no work done, the heat pump will not work. Okay, because we get the efficiency COP as exactly 1. So you should get, in order to get the COP greater than 1, so we have to supply the work to the heat pump, then only it will work. Okay, so there is no work at all. You see the highlight one, no work at all means it violates the Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay, in the explanation, okay, the heat pump without no work, so it extracts the heat from low temperature reservoir at T2 and supplies the heat Q1 to the high temperature reservoir without the aid of work done on the heat pump. So without work done, so it will not work and violates the Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay. Now, okay, the same heat. Now I am going to remove this reservoir. Okay, see. So I am going to remove this reservoir. The whatever the heat Q2 from the heat pump, I am directly taken into the heat engine. Okay, and here it produces the work. You observe here the reservoir, and there is no source at temperature T1. Directly whatever amount of the heat rejected directly taken into the heat engine. Okay, as the directly taken into the heat engine, it produces a net work done, and here remaining heat is rejected to the sink. Okay, anyhow the heat engine will work out here. Okay, because work done takes place. But how the Kelvin-Planck state violates here means according to our statements, in order to work the heat engine, we should have the minimum to a thermal reservoir. In this case, only one reservoir is there. Another reservoir does not exist. Hence, it violates the Kelvin-Planck statement. Hence, the violation of Clausius statement violates the Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay, so first you have to explain the violation of Clausius statement and how it violates the Kelvin-Planck statement. Means you have to remove. You should not show the thermal reservoir which is at temperature T1. You have to show only the thermal reservoir at temperature, less temperature, that is sink. Okay, and first diagram you have to show this one. Okay, and second diagram you have to remove uh, this reservoir, and you have to directly show the amount of the heat transferred from the pump to the heat engine. And so by extracting the heat, it will produce the net work done, and then remaining the heat is rejected to the sink. Okay, this is how the violation of Clausius statement violates the Kelvin Planck statement. Okay. Okay, next I'm taking first how the violation of Kelvin Planck statement violates the Clausius statement. In the previous case, first I took violation of Clausius statement. In the second case, I'm taking first how the violation of Kelvin Planck statement violates the Clausius statement. Okay, for that one, you have to draw this diagram. Okay, first you analyze the diagram properly. You have to draw two thermal reservoir. One is the high temperature reservoir at temperature T1, and another one is low temperature reservoir at temperature T2. Okay, and first you have to show the heat engine, and here second you have to show the heat pump. Okay, and then here you have to show Q1, that is the amount of the heat taken from the higher temperature reservoir at T1, and you see you make Q2 as 0. Okay, means there is no heat rejected at all. You see the highlighted point. Okay, this highlighted point means only Q1 is there, only Q1 is there, and produces the net amount of the work without heat rejection. Okay, so these are the two important things. In the previous case, you have to show no work. You see the highlighted point, and in the second case, you have to show Q2 is 0, means there is no Q2. Q2 is exactly 0, and the heat engine produces the net work done, and which is exactly equals to Q1. Okay, so it violates the Kelvin Planck statement. How it violates the Kelvin Planck statement means, so for any heat engine, we should have the minimum two thermal reservoir. Then only the heat engine will work. Here we are having the two thermal reservoir. Anyhow, two thermal reservoirs there, but there is no heat rejection at all. Whatever the exact amount of the work done equals to the amount of the heat taken from the higher temperature reservoir, means you will get the 100% efficiency. That is net work done divided by heat supplied, means Q1 by Q1 only. So you will get 100%. So 100% is not possible for any heat engine. Hence it violates the Kelvin Planck statement. Okay. Next, how it affects the Clausius statement. Okay. First, this violation of Kelvin Planck state is over. Then how the violation of Clausius statement takes place. Okay. Okay. Next, what I'm there now. So just I'm taking the heat from okay lower sink to the heat pump. Okay. Yes, here you see the heat pump diagram. Okay, here, so by seeing the diagram, Q1 is greater than Q2 here. Okay, so Q1 is greater than Q2, and here you observe the heat pump. Okay, the Q2 is the amount of the heat taken from the lower temperature reservoir sink, and it supplies the heat to the higher temperature reservoir Q1. And so we can analyze that here in this case, Q1 is greater than Q2. Okay. Then what will be the efficiency? Okay. So according to our definition of heat pump, COP equals to Q1 divided by Q1 minus Q2. Okay. So whenever you take Q1 divided by Q1 minus Q2, okay, anyhow Q2 is 0, you'll get once again the COP as exactly 1. Okay. So according to the definition we studied in the heat pump, the definition of the COP for heat pump is given by okay, QH divided by net work done. That is nothing but QH is higher temperature. What is higher temperature here? Q1 divided by Q1 minus Q2. Anyhow, we have not, you see, the Q2 is 0 because we have not considered the heat rejection to the lower temperature reservoir. Then according to the definition, COP will be Q1 divided by Q1 minus Q2. Anyhow, Q2 is 0. We get COP as exactly 1. Okay. So so hence it violates the Clausius statement. So according to our need, we should have the COP greater than 1. Okay, then only the heat pump will work because Q2 is not there, and one more condition is that Q1 is greater than Q2, so Q2 is not there. So because of this one, COP will get as exactly 1. Hence, it violates the Clausius statement. Okay, so like that, clearly you have to explain. These are the two most important concepts in second law of thermodynamics: equivalence of Clausius statement to Kelvin-Planck statement, and this is the equivalence of Kelvin-Planck statement to Clausius statement. Okay, these are the two most important things. Everything you have to put it in the block diagram. You have to show Q1 and Q2 properly. No work done, and here you have to show W equals to Q1, and the same amount of the W is transferred to the heat pump. And because of no Q2, it violates the Kelvin-Planck statement. Okay. So understood, guys? Any doubts in this one? Equivalence of statement? Any doubts? Any doubts? Equivalence of
No,
okay, good. Okay. So first part is statement, that is Clausius statement. Next, Kelvin-Planck statement. Third part is equivalence of Kelvin-Planck statement and Clausius statement. Okay. So anyhow, we are so discussing Carnot cycle here. Okay. Carnot cycle. As I said, Carnot cycle is a theoretical cycle consisting of four processes. One is 1 to 2 is reversible isothermal expansion. Process 2 to 3 is our adiabatic expansion process. Process 3 to 4 is reversible isothermal compression process. And finally, process 4 to 1 is reversible adiabatic compression process. Okay. So in order to find out the efficiency of any heat engine, the QS and QR are required because efficiency is given by net work done divided by heat supplied. Net work done is Q in minus Q out, or heat supplied minus heat rejected divided by heat supplied. Okay, this is a formula to find out the efficiency of any cycle. Okay, here in basic thermodynamics we are studying only Carnot cycle, and in applied thermodynamics so we are having a separate chapter called as the gas power cycles. There you are going to study Otto cycle, that is petrol cycle, diesel cycle, next dual cycle, Stirling cycle, next Breton cycle. Everything we are going to study in applied thermodynamics, that is in fourth semester. Here we are going to study only the Carnot cycle. Okay, Carnot cycle. Okay, so here there are four processes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Process 1 to 2 is isothermal expansion. Follow the law. PV equals to constant. The process 2 to 3 is adiabatic expansion. Follow the law. PV raised to gamma equals to constant. Process 3 to 4 is isothermal compression. Follow the law. PV equals to constant. And finally, 4 to 1 is your adiabatic compression. Then we have to write the expression for the each process. Already we studied isothermal, what is the work done and what is the heat transfer during the isothermal process. You see the formula. Q1 equals to W12. How we get Q1 equals to W12 is you have to apply the first law of thermodynamics. Q equals to delta U plus W. Okay, and delta U is, I said, it is a standard formula is CV into delta T. So these two formulas should remember. Delta U equals to CV into delta T, whatever process it is. And one more formula is that enthalpy H equals to CP into delta T. So they will ask in the numerical problems, find out the change in internal energy means standard formula is CV into delta T, and enthalpy delta H equals to CP into delta T. In case of isothermal process, Q equals to delta U plus W. You have to apply the first law of thermodynamics, and delta U is 0 for isothermal process because CV into T2 minus T1. T1 and T2 are same. So we'll get the delta U as 0 in case of isothermal process. Hence, whatever the amount of heat transfer is exactly equals to the amount of work done in case of isothermal process. And already we derived the expression for work done is nothing but P1 V1 Ln. It's not this is the Ln V2 by V1. That is natural logarithm V2 by V1. Okay. And suppose you are going to put in terms of T1, you can write MRT1 Ln V2 by V1. This is in terms of the temperature and general gas constant. Okay. Similarly, anyhow, there is no heat transfer during process 2 to 3 and 4 to 1. Next, we have to find out what is the amount of heat rejection. It is nothing but Q2. Q2 and W are same in case of isothermal compression process, and we can write the equation as P3 V3 Ln V4 by V3. Okay. So minus sign indicates that there will be heat rejection. Okay. Minus sign. Okay. P3 V3 Ln V4 by V3. Okay. In terms of temperature, MRT2. Okay. MRT2 means here T1, T2, and it's considered as T1. T1 equals to T2 equals to T1, and T3 and T4 are same. That is, we are calling it as T2 while deriving the expression. Okay, so don't make confusion. T2 is nothing but, so T1, T2 is same. That we are representing it as T1. Okay, so here T3 and T4 are same. We are calling it as T2. Okay, so MRT2 Ln V3 by V4. Okay. And so net work done is given by formula for already you know how to establish relationship between various things. So from first law of thermodynamics, for a cyclic process, cyclic integral of dq equals to cyclic integral of dt, because it is a cyclic process. Initial and final states are same. Okay? And for every cycle, you should remember net work done is given by Q1 minus Q2, where Q1 is the heat supplied to the cycle and Q2 is the heat rejection from the cycle. So net eta equals to net work output divided by heat input, W net divided by Q1. Okay. Now you have to take the process. Process 2 to 3 is what? Adiabatic expansion process. Follow the law PV raised to gamma equals to constant. So whenever you take the process between the two states 2 and 3, we can write V2 to the power of gamma equals to P3 V3 to the power of gamma. So this is for adiabatic expansion process. Whenever you take between the two states, we can write the equation like this. Similarly, you can write so process 4 to 1 is also the adiabatic process. We can write between the two states. that is P4 V4 to the power of gamma equals to P1 V1 to the power of gamma. So next PV equals to MRT. Okay, so I'll explain what is the molecular gas constant and general gas constant in module 5. Okay, just now you take only the general gas constant, or the value of R is for air it is 0.29 kilojoules per kg Kelvin. Okay, we'll explain everything in the numerical problem. Okay, so next, now you take the process 2 to 3. Okay, P2 V2 divided by T1 equals to P3 V3 divided by T2. Okay, so don't consider this one. Okay, just we'll go for the final derivation, that is eta equals to eta, the efficiency of any cycle is given by, is this a symbol? Okay, so eta is work output divided by heat supply, that is Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1. So Q1 minus Q2 you can in the simplified form, so 1 minus Q2 divided by Q1, because Q and Q1 are related to temperature, we can write the efficiency of Carnot cycle as 1 minus T2 by T1. You remember the standard formula for the efficiency of Carnot cycle, that is net work done is nothing but Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1. So as the heat supplied is directly proportional to the temperature, hence we can write 1 minus or T1 minus T2 divided by T1. Okay, or 1 minus T2 divided by T1. Hence the efficiency of Carnot cycle is 1 minus T2 is what? Minimum temperature in the cycle, divided by T1 is the maximum temperature in the cycle. We are having only two temperature range in the Carnot cycle. One is the minimum temperature, that is the heat rejected to the sink, and one other one is maximum temperature in the cycle, that is the amount of the heat supplied from the heat source to the cycle. Okay, that is the standard formula for the efficiency of heat engine. Okay, this is the Carnot cycle efficiency. 1 minus Q2 divided by Q1, 1 minus T2 divided by T1, or T1 minus T2 divided by T1. Okay, so now can you tell under what condition you will get the maximum efficiency? Anybody? So I am giving the formula T1 minus T2 divided by 1 minus T2 divided by T1. Okay, so whenever there will be less heat rejection, we'll get the maximum cycle efficiency, you remember. So whenever there will be more heat rejection, then the efficiency of the cycle decreases. On the other hand, in terms of the heat supplied, whenever the temperature T1 is high, so we'll get the more work done, we'll get the more efficiency in the cycle. So that these are the two important things you should remember. As T2 decreases, the efficiency of Carnot cycle increases. As T1 increases, the efficiency of Carnot cycle increases. If T2 increases, the efficiency decreases. If T1 decreases, efficiency also decreases. Hence, the efficiency of a Carnot cycle depends upon the source temperature and sink temperatures. So by providing the maximum source temperature, we'll get the maximum efficiency of the cycle, and by providing the less temperature of rejection, that is minimum temperature, so we'll get the maximum cycle efficiency. Okay, and one more condition. So as I said, the heat engine should have the efficiency less than 1. Okay, then what is the condition? The source temperature should be always higher than that of the sink temperature. Means generally you'll get the efficiency of the cycle less than 100%. If source temperature is less than sink temperature, then you'll get the efficiency more than 100%. That is not possible at all. Okay, so in a heat engine, so we should have two minimum thermal reservoir. One is the source at higher temperature, and another one is the source at low temperature. So this is the Carnot cycle PV diagram. The efficiency of Carnot cycle, how temperature, that is temperature of the source and sink, affects the efficiency of the Carnot cycle. And as I said, Carnot cycle is practically not possible. Okay, it is only theoretical cycle. Why it is not practical means, here you see, okay, we cannot stop the engine in between. So in order to attain the condition, so this engine should run at very slow speed, and for attaining the adiabatic condition, the engine should run at fast. Okay, so that is not possible. Okay, we cannot switch over the speed in between the process. We can start and stop the engine only after the completion of the cycle. Cycle means you should complete all the four processes, then only you can stop the engine. Okay, so it is not possible. Hence, the Carnot cycle is only a theoretical cycle, and it gives, this is a cycle which gives the maximum efficiency. It is the ideal cycle. Okay, and it is used as a standard for other cycle. Now, so hope you understood the Carnot cycle. Next, I am going to explain the most important concept called as Carnot theorem. Okay, don't make confusion between Carnot cycle and Carnot theorem. Okay, you are having the idea of reversible process and irreversible process in first chapter. Okay, I'll repeat once again. The reversible process is one in which all the states are in equilibrium condition. Okay, on the other hand, in an irreversible process, the states are not in equilibrium state. So reversible process is a represent, how we are going to represent the reversible process means by continuous line, thick line. Okay. On the other hand, irreversible process is represented by dotted line. You remember, whenever dotted line is there, that indicates the irreversible process, and the states are not in equilibrium condition. Reversible process is the quasi-static process, and it is very slow process, means it has to undergo all the states and then it reaches the final state. Okay, hence it is a very slow process. On the other hand, the irreversible process is fast process. Only the initial state and final states are in equilibrium condition in case of irreversible process, whereas the intermediate states are not in equilibrium condition. Hence irreversible process is fast as compared to the reversible process. Now here, first we should have the statement of Carnot theorem. It states that all the engines operating between a constant temperature source and a constant temperature sink, none has the higher efficiency than a reversible cycle. It means among all the engines, whatever you take, so that the engine with the reversible cycle gives the maximum efficiency. Suppose if you are having irreversible process, then the engine will not give the maximum efficiency. Okay, so that is a statement. It states that whenever all the engines operating between a given constant temperature source and given constant temperature sink, none has the higher efficiency than a reversible cycle, meaning that the reversible engine which gives the maximum efficiency as compared to the irreversible engine. That is the meaning of Carnot theorem. Okay, next, you see the diagram here. Okay, diagram is most important. So whenever they ask Carnot theorem, so you have to draw these diagram. One is the source at higher temperature T1, and another one is the sink at lower temperature T2. Okay, we are having the two heat engine HEA, means the heat engine A, and one more is that heat engine B. Okay, and you see the in Q1A, is this the amount of the heat extracted from the source T1, Q1A, and it is supplied to the heat engine A and produces the net work output, that is represented by WA, and remaining the amount of the heat rejection is represented by Q2A. Q2A is the amount of the heat rejection from the heat engine A to the sink. Okay, this is the meaning. First you have to show source, sink, heat engine A, so heat engine B, Q1A, Q2A. Next, come to heat engine B, that is Q1B and Q2B, and WA and WB are the work done by heat engine A and work done by the heat engine B. These are the notation. Okay, you have to show all the things properly. You have to show T1 and T2 such that T1 is always greater than T2, then only the heat engine will work. Okay, the meaning of this line diagram. Okay. Now, so once again, what are our assumption now? Okay. Let HE be any heat engine. Okay, it may be reversible or irreversible. You remember that. And HEB is reversible heat engine. Okay, among the two heat engine, B is the reversible engine and A is the irreversible engine. We can assume. Okay, then we have to prove the efficiency of B is always greater than the efficiency of engine A. Okay, so among these two engine, B is reversible engine and A is irreversible engine. Our aim is to prove the efficiency of engine B is greater than that of the efficiency of engine. Okay. Okay, let us assume that. Okay, so we have to, after writing the diagram, so you have to write engine B is a reversible and engine A is any engine, means it may be irreversible. Now starting, I am assuming that eta A is greater than eta B. Now assume you think that just I am doing the assumption, means the efficiency of engine A is greater than the efficiency of engine B. Just I am assuming. Okay, and here I'm assuming Q1A equals to Q1B equals to Q1. Okay, just I'm considering. So whatever amount of the heat is extracting from source, and I'm assuming that Q1A, this same amount of the heat is taken from the source to the heat engine. Okay. So whenever the heat supplied is of equal quantity, then I'm just writing it as eta A equals to eta B. So whenever the amount of heat supplied is same, so just I'm writing it as eta A is beta B. Means efficiency of engine A and efficiency of engine B. Yes, and you just think that it is just assumption. Okay. Next, eta A is what? As I said, the eta A is efficiency of engine A is net work done of A divided by the heat supplied uh, from source to heat engine A. Okay. So the first you write assumption. Next you assume that Q1A equals to Q1B equals to Q1. Next you write eta A equals to eta B. Eta A is nothing but efficiency of engine. The efficiency of any engine is given by WA, means network done, divided by heat supply. That is WA divided by Q1A. Similarly, equivalent to eta B, that is efficiency of B is given by the work done by the engine B divided by the heat supplied uh, to the engine. Okay? WA divided by Q1A equals to WB divided by Q1B. Okay. Now, what I assumed is starting eta A is greater than eta B. Means, so as I said, the work is directly related to the efficiency. When you get the more work done, you get the more efficiency. So when you get the less work, then you get the less efficiency based upon that one. So whenever eta A is eta B, so we can write WA is greater than W. Just is assumption. Okay, remember we have not proved the theorem till now. Just starting, we are doing the assumption. Okay. Next, eta A is greater than eta B. Based upon that one, I can write WA is greater than WB. Means whatever work done by the engine is greater than the work done by engine. Yeah. Okay. Now you have to write second diagram. Okay. Second diagram is so. Second diagram is what? Can you tell what is the difference between first diagram and second diagram, guys? Okay. It's the first diagram. Just observe carefully what is the change in the second diagram. Anybody?
Sir, here an work done from heat pump is heat engine is ejecting to heat pump.
Huh. Engine. What is the meaning? Okay, tell me. I didn't get clearly. Okay. means, so the heat engine is reverse. You see the symbol, okay? Whatever A is written in forward direction, here it is written in the reverse direction. Okay, see, EA is written in the forward direction, EB is written in the reverse direction. Means the engine B is reversed. Means it is a reversible heat engine. Okay, it is reversed. That's why. So first you have to show EB first starting diagram, just you show E in the forward direction. And in the second diagram, same thing. Okay. So you have to change the direction. Okay. So direction means here Q1A you have to take in the forward direction. Q2A is in the forward direction. And Q2B in the reverse direction. Okay. It's nothing but pump. How we are showing the pump. Now, same thing here. You have to say whenever the engine is reversed, means we have to supply the work here. One is engine and one is the pump. You assume like that. Okay, reversible heat engine. Change. Reverse means we have to change the direction of heat flow. Here starting from source to sink, and in the second case we have to show from the sink to source. Okay, that is the difference. Okay, then instead of writing WB here, so you have to show WB on the pump. Okay, that is the difference between first diagram and second diagram. Okay, so you have to reverse. That is the most important thing. Everything you have to change the direction. WB don't write here. You have to write here, and here Q1B and Q2B is in forward direction. Here you have to show Q2B and Q1B is in the opposite direction to that of Q1A and Q2B. Okay. Next, what we assume, okay, WA is greater than WB. Okay, so WA is greater than W means some part of the WA equals to WB may be fed to dry. In the second case, okay, so whatever the amount of the work produced by the heat engine, same amount of the work is required to drive the pump. Okay, so we need the work done. Okay, we need a work for pump. Okay, and so whatever the amount of the work produced by the heat engine A is utilized to run the reversible heat engine B. Okay. Next. And starting what we assume that Q1A equals to Q1B equals to Q1 means whatever same amount of the heat supplied is equals to the same amount of the heat supplied to both heat engine A and heat engine B. Okay, now we are going to write that expression as since Q1A equals to Q1B equals Q1, whatever the heat discharged by you see the direction, you see the direction, the whatever the amount of heat uh, released by the heat pump, and the same thing it is going to take into the heat engine A. Okay. Hello, is it am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so here starting we assume that WA is greater than WB, hence the here because of the reverse direction, the same whatever the amount of the heat rejected from the reversible heat engine, the same amount of the heat is supplied to the heat engine. You see, because the direction is in this direction, okay, continuous direction, hence the amount of the heat rejected from the reversible heat engine equals to the amount of the heat supplied to the heat engine. Then we can eliminate this source, okay, because directly we are taking the heat, we are going to eliminate the source. Okay, the source may be eliminated. Okay, And the net result is that, okay, see this third diagram, we have to eliminate because Q1B and Q1 are same. The net result is that the HEA means heat engine A and heat engine B together constitute a heat engine operating in a cycle produces net work and exchanging the heat with only single reservoir. Means here it is exchanging the heat only with one reservoir after changing the direction, so that we are going to eliminate the source. Okay, next we are having two heat engine and then only one sink is there. We don't have source, hence it violates Kelvin Planck statement. Okay, so it violates Kelvin Planck statement because we are having the only one sink. Okay, and it is exchanging the heat only with one sink. Hence, whatever assumption we made no starting, it is wrong. Okay, so we assume that eta A is greater than eta B. Whatever assumption made in the beginning, it is wrong. Okay, hence our assumption is wrong. Always eta B is greater than eta A. So finally, you have to conclude that our assumption is wrong because we don't have source and it eliminates it the source and it violates Kelvin Planck statement. Hence, whatever assumption we made in the beginning is wrong. Hence, the we can conclude that the efficiency of B is always greater than the efficiency of A. Okay, so whatever engines you take, so the reversible engine is one which gives the highest temperature. Okay, the assumption is wrong. Okay, it cannot be greater than VK. Now, hence, finally, you can conclude that the efficiency of all reversible heat engines operating between the same temperature, the reversible cycle has the highest efficiency. That is the meaning of Carnot's theorem, because they'll ask for 10 marks. You have to draw the three diagrams. Starting, you have to make assumption. After that, you have to reverse the heat engine. Then third diagram, you have to eliminate the source. Okay, and then you have to write the conclusion. Okay, guys, I'll stop the session here. Okay. I hope you understood this Carnot theorem. Okay, so whatever the things I discussed today, most important equivalence of Kelvin Planck statement and Clausius statement and Carnot theorem. Don't make confusion between Carnot cycle and Carnot theorem. For Carnot cycle, just you draw the four process, and for Carnot theorem, you have to write the statement and then you have to draw three diagrams and then proof. Okay, thank you one and all for joining the session. Okay, I'll stop the session now.